On St. Patrick's Day 1997, the animation landscape was forever changed. Cartoon Network launched the action animation block Toonami with a 2-hour block of reruns. Great stories have humble beginnings, but Toonami's begins with thunder, thunder, thunder. Sword of Omens give us sight beyond sight as we peer back in time to the first show to ever air on Toonami. Hi, I'm Chad Bonin. Let's open up the book of Toonami and talk about Thundercats. But not that Thundercats show. Or that other Thundercats show. Feel the magic, hear the roar. This is the Toonami history of Thundercats.
It's been a long time coming, but the OG Toonami's back on the air.
Thundercats live at Madison Square Garden. All your favorite TV superstars in person.
Thundercats, give me power beyond power. Always those plastic mutants. We've been breached. Mock my power.
The story of Thundercats began with an inventive wolf named Ted. Theodore Walter Tobin Wolfe was born in 1922 Pittsburgh to Peter and Elizabeth Wolfe. After the death of his father, Ted was sent to live with his grandparents until he turned 10, when he was placed in foster care. Wolfe put himself through high school and married by the time he turned 19. He then enlisted in the military during World War II and fought in the Battle of the Bulge, surviving but leaving a piece of his leg on the battlefield. After the war, Wolfe studied mechanical engineering, leading to a patent-filled career at Westinghouse. He later became an independent inventor over the decades, creating toy concepts and a portable record player eventually sold by Singer, a predecessor to the portable media devices we use to this day. You got to crawl before you can walk, man.
我々の未来はポータブルミュージックです。バカかバカかわかるだろうわかるだろうわかるだろう出ていけ
One of the many concepts Wolfe was working on would change his life forever. Fantasy was becoming big business and entertainment in the late 1970s and early 1980s. Films like Star Wars and Conan the Barbarian became cult classics and household favorites, so naturally, inspiration to create more properties like those was everywhere. Around 1981, Tobin sketched out some anthropomorphic fantasy characters inspired by wildcats like cheetahs, panthers, lions, and tigers. Oh my. His family, including his daughter Janice, helped flesh out the concept even more.
And I said, Thundercats? What is a Thundercat?
Wolfe felt like he had something here, but he wanted to make sure. So he contacted a friend of his who was also a fellow engineer, veteran, and toy maker, Stan Weston. Weston graduated from NYU in 1954, earning a BA in advertising and journalism. After a 2-year stint in the military, he entered the advertising industry, learning about the licensing side of the business. Weston soon formed his own licensing company, Weston Merchandising Corporation, which had worked with MGM and Universal Pictures. Weston had an idea to create a boys' equivalent to Mattel's widely popular Barbie doll line. Instead of being about fashion, his idea was more military-oriented. Tough guys fighting each other. These weren't dolls, these were action figures. Weston pitched this group of He-Man to Don Levine, vice president of a small toy company known as Hassenfeld Brothers. Levine and his company licensed the idea from Weston for $100,000, close to $1 million nowadays, and the toy line was launched in 1964 as G.I. Joe.
Let's take 'em! G.I. Joe.
Hassenfeld Brothers changed its name officially 4 years later to Hasbro. You may know them from all the toys. Using the money he got from the G.I. Joe deal, Weston built up Weston Merchandising and gained more licensing clients, including top-tier brands such as DC Comics, Marvel Comics, and King Feature Syndicate, the shimp of the big comic trio. He pitched another action figure line, this time to toy maker Ideal Toys. Instead of being military-based like G.I. Joe, this hero would be more of an adventurer. The hook that reeled in Ideal? This hero could become everybody. Every hero imaginable. The power could truly be yours. Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Buck Rogers, the Phantom, Sergeant Rock, the Lone Ranger, Tonto, and even the Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Buck Rogers, the Phantom, Sergeant Rock, the Lone Ranger, Tonto, and even the tangentially related Green Hornet. Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Buck Rogers, the Phantom, Sergeant Rock, the Lone Ranger, Tonto, and even the tangentially related Green Hornet.
Congratulations! Congratulations! Congratulations!
Congratulations.
Thanks to the pre-existing licensing deals Weston had, this action figure line, known as Captain Action, was introduced in 1966, becoming the G.I. Joe rival ideal toys had always wanted. After the successes and fortunes earned from both G.I. Joe and Captain Action, Weston expanded his licensing business, partnering with his friend, illustrator and graphic designer Mike Jermakian,
Congratulations!
to form Leisure Concepts Incorporated. Weston and Wolf had always been in the same kind of business and social circle. Wolf showed Weston his Thundercats idea, and Weston felt like this could be a massively marketable property. LCI pitched the concept to Telepictures Productions, an independent producer who owned animation house Rankin Bass Productions. The studio's founders, Arthur Rankin Jr. and Jules Bass, were originally New York-based advertising artists. Rankin began his career working in the art department for the American Broadcasting Company. Bass worked in advertising in New York beginning in the 1950s. A talented songwriter and lyricist, he befriended Arthur Rankin, and the pair formed Videocraft International in 1960. Rankin and Bass created original properties and outsourced the majority of their productions to animation studios based in Tokyo, Japan. Videocraft's stop-motion productions, dubbed Animagic by the studios, became an iconic part of the studio's legacy. Guided by Japanese stop-motion animator Tadahito Tad Mochinaga, the Animagic productions were produced at MOM Productions, starting with Videocraft's first series, The Adventures of Pinocchio in 1960. Videocraft's first traditionally drawn production, Tales of the Wizard of Oz, was produced by Ottawa-based Crowley Films in 1961. In 1964, Videocraft produced Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer for General Electric and NBC. The stop-motion special was written and storyboarded by Rankin, with designs made by the Videocraft staff, while the animation was overseen by Mochinaga at MOM. The special has become a holiday institution that has become a part of the TV landscape for nearly 60 years, and was the first of many specials to come from the newly branded Rankin Bass studio. In 1971, Tomorrow Entertainment, a media unit owned by General Electric, bought Videocraft. 3 years later, Rankin and Bass created a new independent studio, officially called Rankin Bass Entertainment. The new Rankin Bass Entertainment would continue to produce specials and films, including A Year Without Santa Claus, Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July, and 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, a studio founded by former Toei animation producer Toru Hara. Topcraft produced shows like The Jackson 5, The Osmonds, Kid Power, and various specials such as The Stingiest Man in Town, and the feature film The Last Unicorn in 1982. A year later, Telepictures Corporations bought the studio outright. Telepictures was interested in LCI's Thundercats idea and pitch, which were punctuated by the art and designs of their own Mike Jermakian,
Congratulations!
who fleshed out the designs of the characters and created the iconic Thundercats logo. While Ted Wolfe created the general concepts and characters, comics writer Leonard Starr further fleshed out the series for Telepictures, as well as serving as Thundercats story editor and head writer. Starr's career started in the 1940s when he was still attending the Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. He worked for a myriad of publishers during the golden age of comics, including Harry H. Hessler, Bunnies Incorporated, Timely, now Marvel Comics, Fawcett, National Periodical, now DC Comics, EC Comics, and many others, mostly as an artist. In the 1950s, Starr moved from comic books to comic strips, creating art for the Flash Gordon series, as well as developing his own soap opera adventure, Mary Perkins on Stage, which lasted from 1957 to 1979. Not too long after On Stage ended, Starr revived Little Orphan Annie, a popular comic book strip that had been rerun since 1974, and worked on that until 2000. He also returned to comic books in the 1970s, working with DC and Marvel and drawing books like Morbius the Living Vampire, as well as Superman and Lois Lane. In 1980, Starr co-created Kelly Green, a French graphic novel series about a stunning heroine drawn by artist Stan Drake. Stan's story Bible provided the general series premise as well as the history and the lore the show built itself on. He created the backstory of the majority of the Thundercats characters, the mutants and Mumra, as well as various minor characters including the Burbles. He also designed the map of Third Earth, the Sword of Omens, and the concept of Sight Beyond Sight. Starr wrote 23 episodes, including the first 4 episodes of the series, and a trio of 5-part episodes: Lion-O's and Ointment, Thundercats Ho!, Mumra Lives. Topcraft, which had been Rankin's go-to studio for over a decade, went bankrupt following the production of Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. The film's director and creator, Hayao Miyazaki, from all the anime, bought Topcraft along with Toshio Suzuki and Isao Takahata while firing most of the animation crew. They were named the animation house Studio Ghibli, or Ghibli, or however you pronounce it. The former Topcraft animators formed a new unit, Pacific Animation Corporation, PAC. Masaki Iizuka, who had overseen many of Topcraft's projects for Rankin Bass, continued that role at PAC, starring with Thundercats.
4, 3, 2, 1.
on Toonami.
The first season of Thundercats premiered in syndication on September 9, 1985, lasting 65 episodes. Season 2, which began with the 5-part Thundercats Ho miniseries, premiered on September 8, 1986, with a total of 25 new episodes. Season 3, which began with the Thundercats miniseries, premiered on September 7, 1987. The final season, which launched with the Return to Thundera miniseries, premiered on September 5, 1988. The 130th and final episode of the series, The Book of Omens, aired on September 29, 1988. The series focuses on the team of humanoid cat aliens, Thundercats, who escape the dying planet of Thundera to a new world, Third Earth. Heroes make this trek through the stars led by their elder, Jaga, and when their trip is forced to take the long way there, he volunteers to pilot while everyone else stays in cryostasis. Years later, the refugees make it to their new home, but with two major shifts. Jaga has died to secure their survival, and the young Prince Lion-O has aged in body, if not mind, to that of an adult warrior. Using the powerful Sword of Omens, Lion-O becomes a regal leader of his band of strays, facing off against their homeland's threat, the mutants, who have now sworn allegiance to the mystical force that rules Third Earth, Mum-Ra. The cast largely stayed the same over the course of the series. Lion-O, Tigra, Chitara, Panthro, Wily Cat, and Snarf were occasionally joined by the ghost of Jaga, and later more permanently joined by Pumira, Bengali, and Linkso. Self-contained at the time of production, there were no spin-offs, sequel series, gender-refocused rebrandings, but there were Underoos and action figures. The closest thing to a movie was the 5-part miniseries at the beginning of Season 2, and the lone game was a quick rebrand of a nearly completed computer game with an NES port cancelled. When it came time for Cartoon Network to launch Toonami, the choice was simple. As Jason DeMarco, co-creator of Toonami, stated,
"We picked it up because CN already had the rights, they just weren't using it. And when we saw it on a list of shows, we were immediately like, that one please." I think it's a really unique show in the history of animation because it's really a Western anime, in a way.
When Toonami launched on March 17, 1997, Thundercats was the first show on the block at the 4 p.m. slot. Running Monday through Friday for over a year, and in the original Saturday block, the show was phased out in mid-1998. Notably, this garnered a farewell promo.
You always hate doing things like this. Believe me, it was a tough decision. But you have to do what's best for the team. The Thundercats have been released.
No, I have to stay.
Come home, Chitara.
But we brought back a Hall of Famer.
All are assembled at the Hall of Justice.
In winter 1999 and spring 2000, the show returned for a few weeks, followed by a final run in the spring of 2002. During this run on the block, Toonami created a relatively simple shopwood game, Thundercats Tuma Mum-Ra, that was playable online. Moltar even professed his admiration of Chitara, putting her as the pinnacle of women heroes during the 1990s.
It's the night. Women are strong, stable.
That hurts. I don't want to do this anymore.
Some more than others. For me, one stands head and shoulders above the rest.
Chitara, ho!
She's everything modern woman should be.
Right in front of you, Tigra.
Brains, beauty, blinding speed. There's no damsel in distress.
I can't do it, but Chitara can.
If you're wondering about the woman of the next moment,
Leave it to me.
Many schedules of Toonami's original run had Thundercats at some portion, to the point where reruns of the show were partially the focus of a promo. The show lasted from the very first day with Moltar until well into Tom 2's ride on the Absolution. It was originally replaced by 1980's Voltron, a syndication contemporary undoubtedly for children, and came back a final time to replace Tenchi in Tokyo, a late 90s Japanese series that decidedly was aimed at an older audience. Its existence on the block bookends the budget days of the beginning to the high times of acquisitions and total immersion events. It made appearances on the Daily Block, the Midnight Run, the Rising Sun, and the all-day full cycle. It's like getting an EGOT, but for Toonami. When Toonami last summoned the heroes, the block was still a weekday staple, not having shifted to Saturdays or even Adult Swim. Thundercats proceeded to disappear from the landscape for nearly a decade, with not much beyond comprehensive DVD sets and current availability on Hulu, and occasional brand marketing and references. Musician Stephen Lee Bruner performs under the name Thundercat. Robot Chicken has made a number of Thundercats parodies, as well as The Owl House, Teen Titans Go, and Rick and Morty making explicit or implied references to the franchise.
I've been watching you all from my perch in the cartoon afterlife. You've shown me that Thundercats Roar is a worthy successor, and anyone who says otherwise has a poop mouth with poop opinions.
Comedy Central is rolling with a parody of the franchise called Lightning Wolves, so it may be a bit too early to talk about it. And indie RPG Myth Force also rides with this vibe. Comic books proceeded to tell the continuing tales of the heroes in multiple miniseries. Reclaiming Thundera, The Return, The Dogs of War, Hammerhand's Revenge, and Enemy's Pride told tales of the Thundercats without television limitations. Part of this involved turning Wily Kid and Wily Cat into sex slaves. a drastic diversion from their 1980 star comics, but not from the weird nudity in the pilot episode. If they wear clothes in the rest of the series, does that mean they're naked in the pilot? A highlight of the comics were two crossovers with Toonami associated franchises, Battle of the Planets, on Toonami as G-Force, and Superman, on Toonami as Superman. In this time, the biggest notoriety the franchise got was the unearthing of bloopers from the recording sessions. Shared on this newfangled internet, the bloopers are hilarious, raunchy, and very out of character.
You gotta snap out of it, Lion-O! Call the Thundercats before—
Shut up, you
And keep your foot off that blasted Samo-flange!
What the
Samo-flange?
Somo! I have to do that again.
Oh, Lion-O! We're not—
What's the matter, Snarf?
You got a cold.
It's when Wily Cat and Kid are pretending to be the most helpful that they're dropping their pens on the thing while I'm talking.
The Thundercats signal lit across the sky once again in 2011. Rebooted into a new series with modern animation sensibilities, the same named series exists in a post-Batman, post-Avatar, post-all of the animes world. Notably, the debut of this series led to a handful of the original episodes airing on Cartoon Network's Big Fan Weekend. Also notably, they didn't bother advertising the fact in the promos we can find. We will, hopefully, cover this series in greater detail in a number of years, but here's the brass tacks. The 26-episode series retooled the story to be a grand epic, but with any excuses between production costs, disappointing toy sales, or even flagging ratings leading to the show being cancelled. But Toonami thrives with the cast-offs, and a quick run on Adult Swim's Toonami means that this is a story for another day. Proving cats have multiple lives, 2020 saw a comedic reboot of the franchise. Thundercats Roar survived for 52 episodes, but at 11 minutes, comes into roughly the same length of time as the 2011 franchise, disappointingly short. Surprisingly, the series adapted a few of the original series' episodes, including the origin as well as the soundtrack. As of the recording of this video, Toonami has not aired the abandoned series, but there's a whole list of Toonami-related shows we can talk about one day. The history of Toonami cannot be discussed without discussing the history of Thundercats. The run to the 1980s letter, the heroes of Third Earth never got a major motion picture, didn't get a reboot until the 2010s, weren't folded into any particular multiverse, and largely owed Toonami any notoriety since the 1980s. Thundercats was a quick win for the nascent block, but Toonami never treated it like a disposable commodity. Got the same love and support that the hottest new anime and original US productions would get, and some love on the way out the door. Not many shows have some form of representation on both the Cartoon Network and Adult Swim variants of the block. Lightning doesn't always strike twice, but in the world that William Street created, thunder definitely does. But that's a story for another chapter. Thanks to all of our wonderful backers on our Patreon channel. It's your support that helps the series grow. I literally bought the shirt for this episode. There's a surprisingly small amount of trinkets aimed at the adult fan market. Special thanks to Jeff Harris for bringing his wellspring of animation knowledge to his script, Carl Olson for performing the voice of Jason DeMarco, the Toonami Wiki for all sorts of research notes, and most importantly you, the viewer. Until we meet again, stay gold.